Gwen, you will pay for your sins, I promise you.
The sound of her name ripped through the restaurant like a gunshot, shattering crystal conversations into jagged silence. She wore color for the first time in 18 months. A black dress that felt like war paint, like reclaiming territory stolen inch by brutal inch. The blind date had been going well. Laughter. Wine. The radical act of breathing without permission. Then the doors didn't just open. They exploded inward, and her past stormed through them wearing Kevin's face. 14 months. 14 months of bruises camouflaged under turtlenecks in July. 14 months of apologies for crimes she never committed, for existing too loudly, for breathing wrong. The restraining order trembled in his clenched fist like the joke it had always been. Just paper, just ink, just another system that promised protection and delivered nothing but false hope. He crossed the dining room floor like a man possessed, rage contorting his features into something unrecognizable, something demonic. She'd finally told her truth online. Finally named him. Finally spoke the words that turned her suffering into his humiliation. And he'd come to make her pay. Then her date stood up. Kaitsu Tang didn't shout. Didn't posture. He simply adjusted his cuffs, revealing dragon tattoos that coiled like warnings, and began counting. 1, 3. Each number dropped like a stone into still water, freezing every conversation, every breath. When he reached 5, the entire restaurant understood. They weren't watching a rescue. They were witnessing a reckoning. Did you know? Studies show that domestic violence victims leave their abusers an average of 7 times before permanently escaping. The most dangerous period is actually after leaving. 75% of domestic violence murders occur when the victim attempts to end the relationship. Restraining orders, tragically, only reduce violence in 60% of cases. And there you have it. A story where survival meets devotion, where a woman's healing journey collides with a world that operates beyond the law. If you're drawn to protective anti-heroes who understand that sometimes justice requires darker hands, women who transform from victims into warriors, and romances where danger becomes the shield instead of the weapon, you've found your community. Hit subscribe and tell me what your vibe is right now. Are you tucked in bed past midnight when you should be sleeping? Secretly watching at your desk during lunch break? Escaping reality on your commute home? And where in the world are you tuning in from? I love knowing my story family spans continents. Drop your location and your current scenario. Let's build this community together. Gwen chose the black dress because it made her feel like someone who deserved to take up space. 18 months since she'd worn anything but gray, beige, cream, colors that apologized for existing. Tonight, silk clung to curves she'd forgotten she possessed, and her natural curls caught the candlelight like they were celebrating their own resurrection. "You have a beautiful smile," Kaitsu Tang said, his voice carrying the texture of expensive whiskey, smooth, deliberate, impossibly controlled. Everything about him was measured. The way he'd pulled out her chair. The precise angle of his wine glass. Even his stillness felt intentional, like a predator conserving energy. Her grandmother had insisted. "He understands broken things," she'd whispered from her hospital bed, pressing a folded napkin with his number into Gwen's palm. At the time, Gwen thought it was dementia talking. Now watching him listen, truly listen, to her rambling story about her students, she wondered if her grandmother had seen something she'd missed. "I haven't smiled like this in..." Gwen. The sound of her name detonated through the restaurant, obliterating the murmur of conversations, the gentle piano, the sanctuary she'd been building one careful word at a time. Her body knew before her mind caught up. Every muscle locked. Her throat constricted. The wine glass slipped from fingers that had suddenly forgotten how to hold anything but fear. "Kevin." He stood framed in the doorway like a nightmare given flesh, chest heaving, restraining order crumpled in his fist like evidence of some cosmic joke. 14 months. 14 months she'd survived his love, the kind that left fingerprint bruises on her throat, that turned her apartment into a minefield of triggers and his moods into weather patterns she learned to predict and never escape. "You think you can just humiliate me?" His voice cracked, spittle flying. "Tell the whole goddamn internet I'm some kind of monster?" He tried to speak, tried to breathe, but her body had already fled somewhere deep inside, somewhere he couldn't reach, leaving only the shell sitting frozen in candlelight. Kevin crossed the restaurant floor with purpose, with ownership, like he still had keys to her skin. Diners dropped their forks. A woman gasped. Someone fumbled for their phone. Then Kaitsu stood. The movement was glacial, unhurried, like he had all the time in the universe to decide Kevin's fate. He adjusted his left cuff with mathematical precision, revealing the edge of something dark. Scales? Claws? Ink that seemed to writhe beneath expensive fabric. Then the right cuff. Same ritual. Same terrifying calm. Kevin was 3 steps away when Kaitsu began counting. 1. The word dropped like a stone into still water, sending ripples of silence expanding outward until the entire restaurant held its breath. 2. Kevin faltered. Just for a heartbeat. Just long enough for doubt to flicker across his rage-twisted features. 3. Kaitsu's voice never rose. Never wavered. Each number was a surgical incision, precise and unavoidable. Kevin's hand was already in motion, that familiar backhand she'd learned to anticipate, to brace for, to absorb and apologize for afterwards. 4. The slap connected with her cheekbone, snapping her head sideways, splitting her lip. Blood bloomed copper on her tongue. The restaurant erupted in shouts, in movement, in chaos. But Kaitsu simply said, 5. What happened next occurred in the space between heartbeats. Kaitsu moved like water. Fluid, inevitable, beautiful in the way natural disasters are beautiful. One moment he was standing across the table. The next, Kevin was airborne, his body describing a perfect arc before connecting with the marble floor with a sound Gwen would hear in her dreams for weeks. The wet crack of bone meeting stone, of consequence meeting choices. Kevin tried to rise. Kaitsu's Oxford pressed against his throat, not crushing, just suggesting. A promise made in body language. You have 2 options, Kaitsu said, voice still carrying that whiskey smoothness, that absolute control. Option 1. You leave now, you never speak her name again, you delete her number, you forget she exists. You become a ghost in your own life. Kevin wheezed something that might have been defiance. Option 2, Kaitsu continued, pressing down just enough to make his point. I show you what happens when men put their hands on things that don't belong to them. And I promise you, Kevin, his name became a curse. You will not enjoy my lessons. Someone's phone was recording. Multiple phones. The entire assault, Kaitsu's intervention, Kevin's pathetic struggling. All of it captured in high definition, already uploading, already going viral. 2 security guards materialized, when had they arrived, and hauled Kevin upright with practiced efficiency. His nose was broken. Beautiful. Poetic. His blood on the same floor where her blood had fallen. Then Kaitsu was kneeling beside her chair, eye level, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his dark irises. Gwen. Her name in his mouth sounded like redemption. I need you to breathe with me. Can you do that? She couldn't. Her lungs had forgotten the rhythm. In for 4. He demonstrated, chest expanding. Hold for 4. Out for 4. His hand hovered near hers on the table. Not touching, never touching without permission. You're safe. I promise you're safe. The manager was apologizing. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Diners whispered behind hands. But in the eye of the storm, Kaitsu counted her back to herself. In 3, 4. Her lungs obeyed him where they wouldn't obey her. Hold 3, 4. He held. Out 3, 4. She breathed. When her vision cleared, when the ringing in her ears faded, she found herself studying this stranger who'd just dismantled her nightmare with the same precision he'd used to fold his napkin earlier. Dragon tattoos curled up from his collar now, fully visible, their scales catching the light like armor. Who are you? She whispered. Kaitsu's smile was small, sad, knowing. Someone who understands broken things. Her grandmother's exact words. And someone who knows how to make sure they stay broken when they need to. Outside, Kevin screamed obscenities as police stuffed him into a cruiser. Inside, Gwen touched her split lip and tasted copper and possibility. The counting, she said. Why did you count? Because, Kaitsu replied, finally, taking her hand, his touch gentle as prayer. I needed to give him a chance to make a better choice. I always count to 5. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly. Most men don't make it past 3. The viral video would be titled, Man Counts to 5 Before Destroying Abusive Ex in Restaurant. 47 million views in 72 hours. But Gwen wasn't thinking about views or virality. She was thinking about the way Kaitsu's hand felt like safety instead of possession, like devotion instead of control. She was thinking that maybe, just maybe, her grandmother had understood exactly what she was doing. Maybe broken things could find other broken things. Maybe they could build something beautiful from the shards. Subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss a single second of this cinematic journey. The story is moving fast and you'll want to be here when the final reckoning hits. The office felt different on Monday morning. Same fluorescent lights humming their mechanical lullaby. Same coffee-stained carpet in the break room. Same colleagues pretending they hadn't spent the weekend watching her get slapped in high definition across every social media platform known to humanity. But everything had changed. Gwen's reflection in the elevator doors showed the truth. Foundation couldn't quite hide the purple shadow blooming across her cheekbone. A bruise shaped like Kevin's knuckles. Like evidence that nightmares don't stay buried just because you want them to. Miss Parker. Her assistant Michelle hovered near her desk, clutching a vase of white orchids like they might detonate. These came this morning. No card. Gwen didn't need a card. She recognized the elegant arrangement, the deliberate choice of flowers that symbolized strength and resilience. Kaitsu had done his research. Of course he had. Men like him. Men who counted to 5 before dismantling threats. Didn't do anything without intention. She tried to focus on her work. Tried to lose herself in spreadsheets and quarterly reports. But her body kept betraying her. Every footstep in the hallway made her flinch. Every door opening sent her heart into her throat. Every male voice triggered the muscle memory of ducking, of bracing, of making herself smaller. Phantom grips on her wrists. Phantom breath on her neck. Kevin's voice echoing in her skull. You think you can just humiliate me? Lunch came and went untouched. Her hands shook too badly to hold the fork. It was 3:15 when she noticed him. The man in the gray suit, leaning against a pillar in the parking garage below her office window. Too still. Too watchful. Too positioned. She saw him lift a phone to his ear, saw his lips move, saw him nod like he was receiving orders. Her blood turned to ice. Then she noticed the second one, stationed near the stairwell. Built like a linebacker poured into business casual, earpiece barely visible. And the third, pretending to read a newspaper that was 3 days old. Bodyguards. Kaitsu had put bodyguards on her without asking. Without permission. The orchids weren't just flowers. They were a declaration. You're mine to protect now. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Before you get angry, let me explain. K. Her fingers flew across the screen, fury burning through the fear. You don't get to make decisions about my life. We had one date. The response came immediately. Kevin violated his restraining order 6 hours ago. Tried to access your apartment building. He's escalating. I'm not asking permission to keep you breathing. The room tilted. Her apartment. Her sanctuary. The one place that was supposed to be hers. How do you know that? Because I made it my business to know. We need to look. Dinner. My family's restaurant. 7 p.m. Security will drive you. He should say no. Should tell him to remove his people, to stop treating her like property that needed guarding. Should remember that men who take control, even with good intentions, are still taking control. But her hands were still shaking. And Kevin had tried to get into her home. This doesn't mean I trust you. Good. Trust should be earned. See you at 7. When she left the office at 5:30, the bodyguards materialized like shadows given form. They didn't speak. Didn't intrude. Just existed in her peripheral vision. A reminder that she'd stumbled into a world where protection came with a price she hadn't yet calculated. The restaurant wasn't what she expected. No red velvet. No obvious opulence. Just exposed brick Edison bulbs, and the kind of quiet elegance that whispered old money in a language Kevin's desperate nouveau riche posturing could never speak. Kaitsu waited at a corner table wearing charcoal gray that probably cost more than her monthly salary. He stood when she approached, old-world manners that felt like anachronism and revelation tangled together. You're angry, he said. Not a question. You put bodyguards on me like I'm some kind of asset to be protected. You are. His eyes held hers unflinching. An asset. A person. A woman who deserves to walk through her own life without looking over her shoulder every 30 seconds. He pulled out her chair. Sit. Then yell at me properly. The food arrived without her ordering, dim sum arranged like art, tea poured with ceremony. Kaitsu's grandmother materialized from the kitchen. A tiny woman with steel in her spine and knowing in her eyes that seemed to catalog Gwen's entire existence in 3 seconds. "You're the girl," she said in Mandarin, which Kaitsu translated. "The one on the video. You have good bone structure. Strong chin. You'll need it." Before Gwen could parse that cryptic pronouncement, the old woman was gone. "She approves," Kaitsu said, something almost resembling amusement flickering across his controlled features. "That's rare. I don't need approval. I need you to back off." "No. Simple. Absolute. Kevin's not done. Men like him never are. They view restraining orders as suggestions. Police reports as insults to their manhood. He's going to escalate. How do you?" The restaurant doors exploded inward. Not Kevin this time. 3 men. Tattoos crawling up their necks. One carrying a baseball bat. Another with something metallic glinting in his waistband. But they never made it past the hostess stand. The bodyguards, her bodyguards, materialized like they'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The first attacker's bat clattered to marble. The second was face down before Gwen registered movement. The third tried to run. Kaitsu didn't move. Didn't even turn around. Just lifted 2 fingers and more men in suits appeared from shadows she hadn't noticed, positions she hadn't mapped. "Kevin sent them," she whispered. "Didn't he?" "Yes." Kaitsu's jaw tightened. "He's hiring muscle now. Getting desperate. Dangerous." His hand found hers across the table. That same gentle touch that contradicted everything his world represented. "This is why I didn't ask permission, Gwen. Because asking takes time. And time gets you hurt." Police sirens. Her life had become a symphony of sirens and violence. "Who are you?" she asked. "Really?" Kaitsu's smile was sad, inevitable. "Someone whose family has been solving problems the law can't touch for 4 generations. He squeezed her hand. "Someone who's going to make absolutely certain Kevin learns what happens when you put hands on things that don't belong to you." Outside, Kevin's hired thugs were loaded into police cars. Inside, Gwen realized her grandmother hadn't been delirious at all. She'd been playing chess while Gwen was still learning checkers. Smash that subscribe button and let us know in the comments who you are rooting for. Your support keeps these epic tales coming, so subscribe and join our community of today. The conversation happened in pieces over 3 days. Tuesday morning, Gwen overheard Kaitsu on his phone in the restaurant kitchen, his Mandarin sharp as broken glass. She caught words she recognized from college classes. Territory, shipment, negotiation. Words that painted pictures she'd been deliberately not looking at. Wednesday afternoon, one of her bodyguards, the linebacker-built one whose name was apparently Marcus, accidentally left his jacket on her office chair. The gun underneath was not accidental. Neither was the way he watched her discover it, measuring her reaction like a test she hadn't studied for. Thursday evening, she found the newspaper article. Tang Family Enterprises expands holdings in waterfront development. Legitimate business. Legal ventures. But buried in paragraph 7. Sources close to the family suggest the Tangs maintain influence through traditional organizational structures dating back to San Francisco's Chinatown origins. Traditional organizational structures. The polite way of saying organized crime. She scheduled the confrontation for Friday. Neutral ground. The botanical gardens, public enough to feel safe, private enough to speak truths that couldn't be unsaid. Kaitsu arrived precisely on time, carrying 2 coffee cups like peace offerings. "You've been researching. Your family runs half the city's underground economy." "Not a question. Protection rackets. Import-export operations that import more than silk." "You're not just connected to organized crime, Kaitsu. You are organized crime." He didn't deny it. Didn't deflect. Just sipped his coffee and waited for her to continue. "My grandmother, she knew. She didn't send me to some nice accountant or pediatrician. She sent me to a crime lord." Her laugh came out broken. "What does that make me? Your latest acquisition?" "No." The word cut through her spiral. "It makes you a woman my grandmother recognized as worth protecting. Worth matching with someone who has the resources to make threats disappear permanently." He set down his coffee, turned to face her fully. "Your grandmother understood something the law pretends doesn't exist. Sometimes justice requires hands willing to get dirty. Sometimes the only way to stop monsters is with bigger monsters. That's not. Kevin hired those men to hurt you, Gwen. Possibly kill you. The restraining order is paper. The police are overworked. The courts are backlogged. His voice stayed level, factual, devastating. Pie world. We solve problems the legal system can't touch. We make people disappear who need to disappear. We protect what's ours. I'm not yours. No, he agreed. You're not. And you won't be unless you choose to be. That's the difference between men like Kevin and men like me. He stepped closer, careful, giving her space to retreat. He took your choices. I'm offering you one. Walk away right now, I'll still keep you safe. Or stay knowing exactly what I am and let me show you what devotion looks like when it comes with teeth. She should walk. Should run. Should remember that getting involved with criminals, even beautiful, controlled, counting to 5 criminals, was insanity. But Kevin was still out there. Still hunting. Still believing she belonged to him. I have conditions, she heard herself say. Kaitsu's smile was small, genuine. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Protection, yes. Possession, never. You don't make decisions about my life without consulting me first. No surprises. No controlling where I go or who I see. No cage, even if it's gilded. Agreed. I'm serious, Kaitsu. The moment you start treating me like property. I'll count to 5, he interrupted gently, and remove myself from your life before I become another man who hurt you. His hand found hers, thumb tracing her knuckles. I've spent my entire life learning control, Gwen. Discipline. Restraint. I don't lose control. Not in business. Not in violence. His eyes held hers. And never with you. She believed him. God help her, she believed him. This is insane. Yes, he agreed. But so is loving someone in a world this broken. The Tang family charity gala was held on a rooftop that commanded the city like a kingdom. Skyscrapers bowing in submission to old money and older power. Gwen wore emerald silk that Kaitsu had sent. Not demanded, sent with a note. No pressure. But green is your color. He'd been right. Devastatingly right. You look like victory, he murmured when she arrived, offering his arm with that old-world formality that made her heart do complicated things. The crowd was a careful mixture of San Francisco elite, tech billionaires rubbing shoulders with city council members, philanthropists chatting with shipping magnates. All of it legitimate. All of it legal. Except for the men positioned at strategic points, earpieces barely visible. Except for the way certain guests deferred to Kaitsu's grandmother, who held court near the champagne fountain like a tiny, terrifying empress. Except for the conversation Gwen overheard near the bathroom. The shipment clears customs Tuesday. Our contact at the port ensured the inspection will be cursory. She froze. Stepped back into shadow. Listen. And the Volkov situation? A second voice, younger, nervous. Handled. They won't be challenging our territory again. Mr. Tang made his position abundantly clear. Her blood turned cold. Then hot. Then cold again. Kaitsu found her 10 minutes later, standing at the rooftop edge, staring at city lights that suddenly looked like evidence of everything she was choosing to ignore. You heard something. Not a question. Your people were discussing shipments. Territories. Making someone's challenge go away. She turned to face him. This is real. This is actually genuinely real. You're not just connected to this world, you're running it. Parts of it, he corrected. My family controls shipping, import-export, protection services for businesses the police won't prioritize. We have politicians in our pocket. Judges who owe favors. We're not the Mafia from movies, Gwen. We're more organized. More efficient. More dangerous. Yes. No hesitation. Dangerous to threats. To people who prey on the vulnerable. To men like Kevin who think violence makes them powerful. His hand found the small of her back, steadying. But also dangerous to innocent people if we're not careful. If we don't maintain control. If we let emotion override discipline. Below, the city sprawled like a circuit board, connections she was only beginning to map. The charity gala, she said slowly. It's money laundering. It's legitimate fundraising that also serves to build relationships with civic leaders. He didn't insult her with denials. Both things can be true. And your grandmother? That sweet old woman who called me strong. Runs the family's financial operations and hasn't lost a negotiation in 43 years. She's killed 2 men with her own hands. Both deserved it. The information should have sent her running. Should have triggered every self-preservation instinct she'd rebuilt after Kevin. Instead, she thought about the bodyguards who'd stopped 3 armed men from reaching her. About the way Kaitsu had counted to 5, giving Kevin chances he'd never given her. About her grandmother in that hospital bed, pressing a napkin into her palm with the kind of fierce love that transcended morality. I can't live in both worlds, she whispered. Yes, you can. Kaitsu turned her to face him, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. You already do. You just have to decide if you can accept the darkness that keeps you safe. Below, someone laughed. Music drifted up. The party continued, oblivious. What happens if I can't? She asked. What happens if I wake up one day and realize I've become complicit in something I can't live with? Then you tell me and I let you go. Simple. Absolute. Terrifying in its honesty. No threats. No manipulation. Just goodbye. He kissed him then. Finally. Inevitably. Tasting expensive whiskey and dangerous promises and the kind of devotion that came wrapped in violence. When they broke apart, she whispered against his mouth, I'm choosing you. God help me, I'm choosing this. Then let me show you, he murmured, what it means to be chosen back. If you have been enjoying this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. The screen might go black, but the legend continues. Don't miss the next epic story. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and secrets about to be told. Gwen's grandmother looked smaller than she'd ever been, swallowed by white sheets and beeping machines, her mahogany skin ashen in the fluorescent light. But her eyes still carried the fierce intelligence that had raised Gwen after her parents died, that had taught her to pray and to fight in equal measure. You came with him, grandmother said, watching Kaitsu wait respectfully in the hallway. Good. That's good. Grandma, you need to rest. The doctor said I have weeks, maybe days. She waved a trembling hand dismissively. Which means I finally get to tell you the truth without worrying about having to live with your anger afterward. Gwen's stomach dropped. What truth? About why I gave you his number. The old woman's fingers found Gwen's, grip surprisingly strong. About what I did after Kevin put you in the emergency room that last time, when you lied to the nurses about falling downstairs and I sat there watching you protect the man who was killing you slowly. The memory cut. Fresh. Always fresh. Kevin's rage over burned toast. The kitchen floor. Her ribs screaming. The lie that came automatic. I'm so clumsy. I went to church that night, grandmother continued. Prayed for 3 hours straight, asking God to show me how to save my baby girl when the law had already failed you twice. When restraining orders were just paper he violated with impunity. When the police told you to work it out, like you were arguing about dishes and not running for your life. Grandma. And Sister Chin. You remember Sister Chin from the prayer group? She pulled me aside after service. Asked if I knew why her son never had problems with the gangs in Chinatown, why his restaurant never got robbed, why certain people left her family alone. Grandmother's laugh was bitter, knowing. Because her nephew married into the Tang family. Because she'd made a deal with the devil to protect her own. Gwen's blood turned to ice water. You didn't. I did. No shame. No regret. I went to that restaurant, the one where you had your first date, and I sat across from Kaitsu's grandmother and I told her about my granddaughter. About how the system built to protect women was watching mine die by inches. About how I needed someone who operated where law couldn't reach. The room spun. The machines beeped their mechanical symphony. Outside, Kaitsu's shadow fell across the doorway, listening to his own damnation. She looked at me, grandmother whispered, and she said, my grandson understands broken things. He was engaged once to a girl who loved him. Until her ex-boyfriend put her in the ground before Kaitsu could stop it. He was 19. He's been counting to 5 ever since, giving men chances his fiancée never got. Gwen couldn't breathe. Couldn't process. Kaitsu had been there. Had lived this nightmare from the other side. So I made a deal, grandmother continued. I gave them information about our family, proving we were worth protecting, that you weren't involved in anything that would complicate their business. And Mrs. Tang promised that when the time was right, when you were ready to try again, she'd arrange a meeting with her grandson. You traded me. I saved you. Steel in her voice now, the steel that had raised Gwen through grief and adolescence and heartbreak. The legal system failed. Your job's HR department failed. Your friends who told you to just leave him, like it was that simple, they all failed. So I went to the only people in this city who don't fail when they make promises. Tears burned Gwen's eyes. Rage. Gratitude. Her. Love. Everything tangled into something she couldn't name. I needed someone who breaks back, grandmother said simply. The world took my gentle girl and broke her. I needed someone who understands that sometimes love requires darker hands. That sometimes justice comes with tattoos and counting rituals and the kind of power that makes predators think twice. You should have told me. Would you have gone? Would you have let yourself be set up with a crime lord if you'd known? Her grandmother's smile was sad knowing. Or would you have stayed alone, looking over your shoulder for the rest of your shortened life, waiting for Kevin to finish what he started? Kaitsu appeared in the doorway then and the old woman's face softened. Come here, boy. Let me look at you properly. He approached with the same respect he'd show royalty, taking her other hand with infinite gentleness. You love her, grandmother said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. And you'll protect her. Even from yourself if necessary. Especially from myself. The old woman nodded, satisfied. Then I can die knowing I chose right. That my baby girl will be safe in a world that tried to destroy her. She looked at Gwen. Forgive an old woman for playing God. But I'd do it again. I'd make deals with every devil in hell if it meant you got to live. She died 3 days later. At the funeral, 5 of the Tang family elders stood in the back row, paying respects to a woman who'd understood that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places. That sometimes love requires calculated risks. That sometimes the only way to save someone is to trade their future for a different kind of dangerous. The plan came together over whiskey and tactical maps spread across Kaitsu's dining room table like blueprints for war. No. Marcus, the linebacker bodyguard, shook his head emphatically. Absolutely not. We don't use civilians as bait. Ever. I'm not a civilian in this, Gwen said quietly. I'm the target. Have been for months. And Kevin's getting bolder. The evidence was irrefutable. 3 more violations of the restraining order. Emails to her work address describing what he'd do when he got her alone. A bouquet of dead roses left on her car. Photos of her morning jogging route posted to a burner social media account with timestamps and commentary that made her skin crawl. The police had arrested him twice. He'd posted bail within hours both times. His lawyer was expensive, connected, making the charges disappear into plea bargains and probation that Kevin violated before the ink dried. He's escalating toward a violent conclusion, Kaitsu said, voice clinical despite the muscle ticking in his jaw. The behavioral pattern is textbook. He'll corner her somewhere isolated and he won't stop until she's dead or he is. Which is exactly why we don't put her in that position voluntarily, Marcus argued. We put her in a controlled version of that position. Gwen's voice was steady, stronger than she'd heard it in months. We choose the location. The timing. We make sure you're close enough to intervene. But we give Kevin exactly what he thinks he wants. Me alone vulnerable. Kaitsu's hands clenched on the table. If anything goes wrong, then your team is right there. But it won't go wrong because we'll plan it perfectly. She met his eyes across the tactical map, saw the war between his heart and his head playing out in real time. This is the only way to end it permanently. On camera. Irrefutable evidence. Him making the choice to assault me with witnesses positioned to intervene before real damage happens. You're asking me to watch the woman I love be attacked. I'm asking you to trust that I'm not fragile anymore. She stood, moved around the table, cupped his face in her hands. Kevin took my power. Made me believe I was weak, that I deserved his violence, that I'd never escape his shadow. And I'm done being his victim. I'm done running. I'm done looking over my shoulder. The room fell silent except for the clink of ice in glasses, the rustle of maps. Where? Kaitsu asked finally. The parking garage at my office. 3rd level. Thursday night. I'll work late. Make sure he knows through the receptionist he's been calling. Give him the opportunity he's been waiting for. We'll have 8 positions, Marcus said, already sketching angles on the map. Professional instinct overriding his objections. Cameras with audio. 2 witnesses with law enforcement backgrounds. We document everything. His approach, his words, the moment he puts hands on you. How close can you be? Gwen asked Kaitsu. Close enough to stop him before he does real damage. Not close enough that he sees me coming. His voice was gravel, fury barely leashed. I'll be counting, Gwen. In my head. And I swear to God if he makes it past 3. He won't hurt me. Not this time. She said it like prophecy, like promise. This time I'm the trap. And he's going to walk right into it. They spent 4 hours planning. Positioning. Timing. What she'd say. How she'd stand. Where the cameras would be hidden. Escape routes if it went wrong. Medical on standby. Police pre-notified that an operation was in progress. This is insane, Marcus muttered, but he was already calling in specialists, equipment, people who owed the Tang family favors. This is justice, Gwen corrected. The kind the courts couldn't give me. When everyone else had left, Kaitsu pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and she felt him trembling. I count to 5 because my fiancé never got a countdown, he whispered against her temple. Because I was young and stupid and I thought love would protect her. And it didn't. And she died while I was 3 blocks away, too late to save her. I know. My grandmother told me. So you understand why this plan is my worst nightmare. And you understand why it's my only path forward. She pulled back, made him look at her. I need to face him. Not as a victim. Not as someone being rescued. As someone who sets the trap and watches it snap shut. His kiss tasted like whiskey and desperation and acceptance. Thursday, he agreed. We end this Thursday. We end this Thursday, she echoed. And began counting down the days until she could finally stop counting at all. Smash that subscribe button and let us know in the comments who you are rooting for. Your support keeps these epic tales coming, so subscribe and join our community of today. Thursday arrived wearing the face of inevitability. Gwen dressed in gray, the color of ghosts, of the woman she used to be when Kevin owned her fear. She wore it deliberately. Armor in reverse. A costume designed to make him think she was still that fragile thing he could break. The office day crawled. Every hour felt like swimming through concrete. At 4:30 she made sure to tell the receptionist, the one who'd accidentally mentioned to Kevin's lawyer where Gwen worked, that she'd be staying late. Quarterly reports. 3rd-level parking garage. Alone. The bait was set. At 7:15 the office emptied. The fluorescent lights buzzed their lonely song. Gwen gathered her things with deliberate slowness, checking her reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back looked calm. Looked ready. Looked like someone who'd already survived the worst and came back stronger. The parking garage swallowed her in concrete and shadow. Her heels echoed against cement, each step a countdown. She knew Marcus was positioned behind a support column 30 feet away. Knew Kaitsu was in a blacked-out SUV 2 levels down, watching through camera feeds, counting his own private numbers to keep from storming up the ramp. Knew that somewhere in this manufactured darkness, Kevin was already hunting. She made it to her car. Fumbled with her keys, a performance making herself look distracted, vulnerable. The perfect prey. Gwen. Her blood turned to ice and fire simultaneously. She turned. Kevin emerged from behind a pillar like a nightmare given flesh, and God, he looked worse than the restaurant. Thinner. Wilder. Eyes carrying the manic gleam of a man who'd lost everything and decided to burn what remained. You've been avoiding me, he said, voice carrying that familiar sing-song quality that used to precede violence. That's rude, baby. After everything we meant to each other. We're done, Kevin. The restraining order is bullshit. Spittle flew. He advanced. She held her ground, every muscle screaming to run, to flee, to become small. You humiliated me. Told the whole world I'm some kind of monster. Made me lose my job. My apartment. My reputation. You did that yourself when you put your hands on me. His laugh was broken glass. I loved you. Gave you everything. And you repay me by spreading lies? By making me look weak. Another step. Close enough now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath, the desperation in his sweat. You're going to take it all back. Every word. Every post. Every goddamn lie. They weren't lies. Her voice didn't shake. Didn't waver. You beat me, Kevin. Strangled me. Made me apologize for your violence. That's not love. That's control. And I'm done being controlled. Something shifted in his eyes, the moment she'd been waiting for. The moment he transitioned from words to action, from threats to follow-through. You think your mafia boyfriend scares me? Kevin lunged, hands reaching for her throat with the muscle memory of a man who'd done this before. You think anyone's going to save you? His fingers closed around her neck. And Gwen didn't flinch. She stood in the fire and didn't burn, looking into his eyes as he squeezed, watching him realize too late that she wasn't afraid anymore. That she'd become something he couldn't break. 1. Kaitsu's voice cut through the garage like a blade. He stepped from shadow, emerged from darkness itself, and his calm was more terrifying than any rage. 2. Kevin's grip loosened. His head whipped around searching for the source. 3. Marcus materialized from his position, camera running, documenting every second. 2 more witnesses emerged, former police, current Tang family associates, their presence legal and damning simultaneously. 4. Kevin's hands dropped from Gwen's throat. He stumbled backward, reality crashing down. This is a setup. This is documentation, Kaitsu corrected, still advancing with that glacial calm, that terrible control. Of you violating a restraining order. Assaulting a woman. Making the choice, despite being given multiple chances to walk away, to put your hands where they don't belong. 5. Kevin tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Kaitsu's fist connected with his jaw. Surgical, precise, the same controlled violence from the restaurant but colder now, more final. Kevin went down hard and Kaitsu followed him down, knee on his chest, phone pressed to his ear. 911. I'd like to report an assault in progress. The victim is safe. The perpetrator is contained. Yes, we have video evidence. Multiple witnesses. He violated an active restraining order. Police sirens. But this time they were singing Gwen's song. Kevin lay on concrete, bleeding, crying, finally understanding that some cages lock from the outside and some women learn to build the trap themselves. Gwen touched her throat where his fingers had been. The last time she promised herself. The last goddamn time any man would put hands on her and think he'd won. When the police arrived, they found irrefutable evidence. Kevin's assault captured in high definition from 4 angles. His violation of the restraining order documented with timestamps. Witnesses ready to testify. The detective recognized Gwen from the viral video. You okay, ma'am? Better than okay, she said and meant it. I'm free. They arrested Kevin with additional charges. Felony stalking, assault, violation of a protective order. His lawyer couldn't make these disappear. Not with video. Not with witnesses. Not with a woman who'd stopped being a victim and become the architect of her own justice. Kaitsu waited until the police cars disappeared before pulling her close, his control finally cracking as he buried his face in her hair and trembled. You didn't flinch, he whispered. You stood there and you didn't flinch. I wasn't alone. She pulled back, cupped his face. And I'm not fragile anymore. You helped me remember that broken things can be reforged into something stronger. I love you, he said. Simple. Absolute. I love you with everything I have and everything I am. I know, she replied. That's why this worked. Because you taught me that protection and possession are different languages. And I finally learned to speak the right one. 6 months later, Gwen stood before the Tang family elders in a private room that smelled like incense and old power, wearing red silk that signified luck and courage in equal measure. Mrs. Tang, Kaitsu's grandmother, the woman who'd brokered Gwen's salvation with her own dying grandmother, sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 men whose combined age exceeded 3 centuries and whose combined influence could move mountains. You wish to marry our grandson, Mrs. Tang said. Not a question. I do. You understand what that means? That you'll be part of this family? That our business becomes your business? That you'll carry our name and our secrets? The old woman's eyes were sharp, calculating. That there's no going back once you commit? I understand that your family operates in spaces the law doesn't reach. That you solve problems through methods I was raised to believe were wrong. Gwen's voice stayed steady. I also understand that you protect what's yours with absolute loyalty. That your word is your bond. That you've built an empire on discipline, control, and a code of honor that many legitimate businesses abandoned generations ago. One of the elders leaned forward. And you can live with that? Can sleep beside a man who's ordered violence? Who's made people disappear? I can sleep beside a man who counted to 5 when he could have destroyed my abuser in 2 seconds flat. Who gave chances where none were required. Who taught me that power without control is just tyranny, but power with discipline can protect instead of destroy. She met each elder's gaze. I've seen your world and mine, and I choose both. Because I'm not naive enough to believe that justice only comes wearing a badge, and I'm not broken enough to accept injustice quietly. Mrs. Tang's smile was small, approving. You have spine. Good. You'll need it. She gestured to Kaitsu, who'd been standing silently by the door. Come. Stand with your woman. He crossed the room, took his place beside Gwen, and the elders saw it. The way he deferred to her without diminishing himself, the way she leaned into him without losing her strength. Approved, Mrs. Tang declared. Unanimously. The wedding was 3 months later. A fusion of cultures that reflected everything they'd become together. Gospel choir singing in Cantonese. Traditional tea ceremony followed by soul food reception. Gwen's church family sitting beside Tang family associates, finding common ground in celebration despite vastly different understandings of morality. Kevin watched from prison, where he'd been sentenced to 8 years for felony stalking, assault, and violation of protective orders. The judge had cited the video evidence, the pattern of escalating violence, and the defendant's complete lack of remorse in handing down the maximum sentence. He'll appeal, Gwen's lawyer had warned. Let him, Gwen had replied. I'm not afraid anymore. She'd launched her own consulting firm, helping other survivors navigate the gap between legal protection and actual safety, connecting women to resources both conventional and otherwise. Some clients she referred to therapists and support groups. Others she quietly introduced to families like the Tangs, to people who understood that sometimes justice required darker methods. She operated in the gray space between worlds, and she was extraordinarily good at it. The final scene of their story happened on a rooftop garden, Gwen wearing soft cotton and Kaitsu's shirt, her hand resting on the small swell of her belly where new life grew from ashes of the old. You're thinking too loud, Kaitsu murmured, pulling her close, his hand covering hers on the evidence of their future. I'm thinking about my grandmother. About how she made an impossible choice and saved my life. Gwen leaned back against his chest. About how I judged her for it before I understood that love sometimes requires calculated risks. She was a warrior in grandmother's clothing. Like Mrs. Tang. Exactly like Mrs. Tang. His laugh rumbled against her back. They would have been terrifying friends. Below them the city sprawled, full of people making impossible choices, surviving impossible situations, learning that morality isn't always black and white but every shade of gray in between. Are you happy? He asked. Gwen considered the question. Considered the journey from that restaurant assault to this rooftop sanctuary. From victim to survivor to warrior to wife to mother-to-be. From a woman who couldn't breathe in her own skin to someone who'd learned to weaponize her fear and emerge victorious. I'm free, she said finally. And loved. And safe. And strong. She turned in his arms. And choosing you every single day. Even knowing everything you know? Especially knowing everything I know. He kissed him soft and certain. You taught me that extraordinary devotion sometimes wears the face of ordinary men who do extraordinary things to protect what they love. I counted to 5, he reminded her. And I learned to stand in the fire without burning. She smiled. We're both warriors now. Just different kinds. Their daughter was born 4 months later, in spring when everything blooms. They named her Grace, after Gwen's grandmother, after the concept of unearned mercy that both women had embodied in their complicated, beautiful, morally gray ways. And when Grace was old enough to understand, they'd tell her the truth. That love sometimes requires difficult choices, that protection comes in unexpected forms, and that being strong means knowing when to count to 5 and when to stand your ground at 1. That extraordinary devotion looks nothing like fairy tales. It looks like counting. It looks like choice. It looks like 2 broken people who found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful from the shards. If you have enjoyed this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. Tell me your favorite part of the story and why you think it's the best. I'd be in the comments section watching and replying to all your messages.